How do you feel when you go someplace different? Someplace where you've never been before and you're surrounded by people you've never met, maybe a different culture. Well, I know that I feel pretty insecure. I feel pretty self-conscious. I feel like I don't fit in, like I don't belong there, like I shouldn't be there. And I don't think that that's a very uncommon response, especially given if we take a look at what's happening in a lot of places in the world at the moment. The level of discrimination, the level of xenophobia, all of these things that are happening now, we have a pretty long track record of being repulsed by people who we judge as different to ourselves. And when I say repulsed, what I mean is not like the disgusted kind of repulsion. I'm talking about like feeling repelled. Like you try and walk up to something and there's a barrier that keeps pushing you away from it, type of thing. When we meet people who are different to us, and when we see people who are different to us, our kind of natural response is to want to reject them, to want to get away. And maybe that comes from our genetic history. Maybe it's some deep-rooted survival instinct where new people in new situations we should automatically treat as being potentially dangerous. Doesn't matter. What matters is that it's here now. We have to face it here now. An interesting thing is that it comes from this basic belief that people can actually be different from each other. And yes, from one dimension, we are all different. We're all unique. We're all a unique expression of life. We have different histories. We have different thought patterns, response patterns, all of these things. So yes, we are different, but on the other hand, we're also very much the same. We all have similar kinds of goals. We would like to create good lives for ourselves. We would like to protect our families. We would like to be comfortable. We would like to eat things that we enjoy eating, do things that we enjoy doing. We would like to find some greater meaning in life. Those are just some examples of the things that are similar across most people. So when it comes to meeting and seeing different people, it takes a deliberate effort to actually get past that initial resistance of not wanting to really interact with them. And what's interesting is that most of the time when we do push past that resistance, pretty much any person we meet, there's going to be some form of similarity that we have with them. There's going to be some point that we can find a connection to them through. And as I was looking at the point for this video, it opened up in such a way that as I was looking at this point of connection, the people who we feel close to, the people who we feel connected with, are the people with whom we share similarities, with whom we share similar worldviews, with whom we share a similar sense of humor, taste in music, all of these things. And it begs the question, is that sense of connection not just us seeing ourselves in other people, us recognizing that sameness, that equality, that recognition of ourselves in someone else? So I thought that was quite an interesting way of looking at the thing, because in my experience, every person who I've met, once I made an effort to start to get to know them and to start creating those points of connection, creating those points where I recognize myself in them, past all the superficial differences of opinion and belief and things like that, getting into the core of what is it that motivates them and what is it that motivates me. I found those connections, I found those similarities with any person, because we share very similar motivations and core desires and principles in life. We want to be good people, we want to be good to each other, we want to create good lives. But somewhere along the way, we get caught up in all of our differences. We get caught up in focusing on what makes us different, instead of recognizing those similarities that bring to light how much we are actually alike. Doesn't matter what culture or religion or country we belong to, we share very similar common core values. And again, I'm not talking about the superficial stuff. I'm talking about the really deep motivations and values that form part of why we're here and why we continue to be here and what motivates our decision making in everyday life. So, my suggestion, if you're watching this and you've gotten this far, start seeing how you can practice understanding other people rather than judging them, rather than focusing on their differences. See how you can start developing your vocabulary and your communication skills in such a way that getting messages and meanings getting lost in translation doesn't happen as often, because that's one of the big problems, is that we are saying the same things but we're using different words and we have different meanings for the words that we're using. So things get lost in translation and we experience it as a difference of opinion, when in truth it's a difference in vocabulary. So those are the two things I suggest. Expand your vocabulary and don't be afraid to ask people what they mean. Even if it means that every second word you have to ask what they mean by that word, because maybe when they're using that word they have a slightly different meaning to what that word means to you. And then focus on learning how people came to be who they are. Every behavior, every choice, everything that we do has a reason behind it. Doesn't mean that it's a right or a wrong reason or a good or a bad reason. We do what we do because of the lives that we have led and the ways that we have designed ourselves to cope with situations. So yes, sometimes our actions are destructive, but there's a reason for that. It doesn't mean that it's acceptable, but what's interesting is that the more you start understanding other people's reasons for being who they are, or for doing the things they do, the more difficult it becomes to judge them, because now you can see what path they traveled to get there. And also what you'll start seeing is how you can support people to consider different things, consider different approaches, consider different behavior or application that might give them better results. that might not have such a destructive outcome, for example. And just changing these simple things of vocabulary and communication skills and understanding rather than judging and focusing on differences, those are two things that could have such a huge effect on our relationships with each other on a global scale. Because so much of what is wrong with our society these days and what is wrong with the world these days comes from misunderstandings, miscommunication, and focusing on our differences rather than coming to common ground and creating ways forward that honor the common core values that all of us hold: to protect life, to honor life, and to allow life to thrive. Okay, thank you for watching. And if you would like to support me, you can do so on Patreon or on Steemit, which is like a social network with its own cryptocurrency. If you would like to be part of the conversation, or if you'd like to share your thoughts, ask questions, anything like that, you can leave a comment or send a direct message to me. I'll see you next time.